The late Queen Elizabeth II's coffin has been laid down on the gun carriage. As Leanne was saying, it's 123 years old. Her own father was carried by that when he was having his funeral in 1952. And what's going to happen now is that these Royal Naval soldiers, which number between 98 and 142, we're not quite sure of the exact number, they're going to tow the Queen's body round the corner to Westminster Abbey. Now, this journey should take 8 minutes, but it will probably feel like the longest 8 minutes that we've observed. So that is what's going to happen. And in tow with them will be King Charles III and the other royal male members, that is Prince William, as well as another grandchild who is also male, will also be proceeding with that coffin to Westminster Abbey. Atop the coffin, we see the Imperial state crown, which of course has been atop the coffin during the Queen's lying in state for the past 4 days. We see the Black Prince's ruby there. There's the St. Edward's sapphire, as well as the Colonial, the second diamond that was cut from the largest diamond in the world. And this is a very impressive crown in that it has thousands of diamonds, a few rubies and emeralds and other precious stones.
To tell you a little bit more about this towing and the soldiers, the military behind, the ones at the front pull the coffin, and the function of the ones at the behind are to steer it, actually, to make sure that it's straight and it stays in order. And draped on top of the coffin is the royal standard. And there are two versions of this. One that is used in England, Northern Ireland, Wales, and the Crown dependencies and the British overseas territories. And there's another one which is similar, but not exactly the same, which is used only in Scotland. So that's the royal standard, the Queen's flag, as it were, draped on top of the coffin.
All right, so the procession starting and that walk that Nompa was speaking to as they make their way to the Abbey. But let's have a look further at the back, because I think that is what people are really wanting to see. And that, of course, is the family of the late Queen Elizabeth II, led by King Charles III. And you can see him there wearing his uniform. And of course, this he holds the rank of Field Marshal, and his uniform has 10 medals, including a Queen's Service Order medal, a Coronation medal, silver, golden, diamond and platinum medals, as well as many, many more. Next to him, Princess Anne holds the rank of Admiral in the Navy, General in the Army, and Air Chief Marshal in the RAF. Next to her, we of course have got Prince Andrew. And Prince Andrew has been stripped, as you all know, of his royal duties following his involvement of the Jeffrey Epstein controversy. And this was a really difficult moment for the Queen, having to handle this during her final years. He was forced to hand back his military titles in January 2022. But he is there. He hasn't worn any of his uniform to the official engagement, and the funeral, of course, included in this. Prince Edward, the youngest son, is also there. He, of course, is the Earl of Wessex. And Edward joined the Royal Marines after leaving university in 1986, but dropped out of the commando course after having completed 1/3 of it. So he is there. That, of course, being rounding up the children of Queen Elizabeth II. Then, of course, it is the next in line to the throne. And that, of course, is William, the Prince of Wales, with his new title. Prince William completing 7.5 years of full military service. He initially completed training as an officer, eventually being commissioned as a lieutenant in the Blues and Royal Regiment and a pilot, and then he underwent helicopter flying training in order to become a full-time pilot and search and rescue force. And then finally concluding those that are leading into the church with the behind the coffin is, of course, Prince Harry. He's the Duke of Sussex. Now, many waiting to see, of course, the Duke of Sussex, who Prince Harry is a non-working royal. He, of course, has been barred from wearing his uniform at any of the official functions, including the funeral and the vigil. He served 10 years in the British Army, which included 2 tours in Afghanistan, rising to the rank of captain. But he, of course, did decide to break away and live a life in the United States alongside his wife, the Princess of, the Duchess of Sussex, I beg your pardon, in North America. So there we go. This is the procession that's moving and those that are accompanying.
But of course, we did see a day or two ago, Prince Harry was wearing his full uniform regalia when he and cousins went to pay their respects at Westminster Hall and make a vigil for the late Queen II. So at least he was able to wear his uniform there.
Yeah, the father, of course, is king, saying he has to do that, and he is able to do it.
The Queen leaves behind a huge family, 4 children, 8 grandchildren, and 12 grandchildren. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. But first, let's go to Stembiso, who's been watching social media for us, just to get a sense of what people have been saying. Stembiso?
Thank you so much, Peter. Of course, as you mentioned that, of course, the Queen Elizabeth will be buried next to her husband, Philip. On social media users took time just to reflect on the two, simply saying they are connected. Once again, you can see the Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. Beautiful photo taken back in the days. As we move to the next one, people really sharing their thoughts, you know, the messages of support. And of course, you can see one of my favorite photos of the Queen and Prince Philip. Of course, this photo was taken in 2003. And basically people reflecting on the good times that they've had as we move into the next one. Of course, here, this photo was taken here in South Africa, of course, as the Queen, of course, the famous quote that she said, it's simply saying that she's really willing and devoted to serve. And those are some of the social media sentiment where people are sharing their thoughts, their views about the Queen, as you will all know that she'll be laid to rest along her husband. Back to you, Peter.
Thanks very much indeed, Stembiso. The biggest event probably in British history, the funeral service of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who sat on the throne for 70 years. Incredible to think that most Britons have only ever known her as their head of state. Head of state of 15 realms. We say 14, but people forget that the United Kingdom is one of the realms, so it's 15 in total, and many of those are represented today. But this procession, I think, very much symbolizing the royal family itself, the institution, and as Sophie was describing a few moments ago, who was there, and the similarities of the funeral that we saw with Princess Diana. That was called a ceremonial funeral, not a state funeral, but it was the highest that could be afforded to somebody who's not a monarch and not given a special ceremony.
It's quite incredible to see the timing of this event. I mean, they had said exactly at 11:52 that will be the moment that the procession arrives at the west gate of Westminster Abbey, and that is very much so the exact location of where they are right now. So this is that procession that the bearer will then lift the coffin from that gun carriage we are looking at right now on your screens and carry it into the Abbey for the state funeral that will begin at exactly 11 o'clock. We are not hearing it. Perhaps some of the viewers are listening at home, but there is a massive procession of bagpipes and drums of the Scottish and Irish regiments that are ringing through the streets at the moment. The brigade of Gurkhas and the Royal Air Force that are numbering 200 musicians. So you can imagine the sounds that are accompanied by these visuals that we are showing you here this morning.
Sophie, as you view these visuals, what sort of parallels does it make you think of? What's the significance for you, having watched a lot of the historical events in the past?
Well, I think it speaks to the funeral of the former South African president. That was a state funeral, and the military was in control, and therefore everything was done in time. And even here, the military is playing a prominent role. But also when I look at that coffin, on top of that coffin and I look at that crown that Peter spoke about and explain what's entailed in terms of when they were putting together this crown, what comes to mind is the raging debate out there, particularly on the African continent, in terms of whether when she was alive, did she do enough in terms of admitting and showing remorse in terms of the colonial past, but also people saying that crown, when you look at that Cullinan diamond, many people are saying perhaps it's time for the royal family to think about what needs to be done to ensure that those who suffered during the colonial rule, who can forget people in Kenya who died, almost a massacre, and many other parts of the world. And also right now, in some of the islands nation, in the Caribbean islands, people moving away from having the queen and or perhaps the king as the head of state in those countries, Barbados an example.
Thanks very
Sophie,
much for
thanks
those
very-
observations, Ms. Sophie. Let's take a quick break.